Just added a hat. Anything else technologically you got to know about Rome? All right. Okay, and then so what we'll see here is that the Roman Empire will become victims of its own success. It will become so big and so diverse, right? And by diverse, remember, when we're talking about ancient Europe, we don't mean like, oh, there's a lot of different colors of people, right? Because even remember, amongst the white people in Europe, they are all considered different, right? Remember, ethnicity matters in Europe, right? So if we look back, we're like, oh, these are all paintings of white dudes. Yeah, but they're not the same white dudes, right? A Spaniard was not a Roman.
Is that Western Roman Empire?
Yeah. Right, so what happens is it becomes so big that it becomes unmanageable. So the first thing they do is they split the empire. Right, they're going to split the empire down the middle, and they're going to say there's the Western Roman Empire and the Eastern Roman Empire. Right? So now we get two capitals. You get Constantinople in the east, you get Rome in the west. Right? What this does, though, for Western Europe, or excuse me, for the Western Empire, is that it cuts it off from the Silk Roads. Right? It's no longer part of that big trade route. It's cut off from its economic engine. Right? And so the Western Roman Empire will start to suffer economically. It'll go through that 3rd century crisis where they have inflation. They have to start setting prices, and they start forbidding people from changing jobs. Right? Like, oh, you were a blacksmith, wait, so you have to stay a blacksmith even if the opportunity to do something else shows up. No, you're stuck in your job because we can't have any kind of vacancies, right? They start doing real crazy things. And then that weakens the Western Roman Empire and makes them susceptible to invasions by nomadic peoples, right? The Goths, the Visigoths, yeah, all kinds of people. Yeah, bog people. Yeah. Bog people are not a real thing. Don't write that down.
Can you imagine?
Like the Huns were in there. Yeah, all kinds of things. Meanwhile, the Eastern Roman Empire will continue to thrive because it's going to be able to continue to prosper off of that Silk Road trade. Right? So when the Western Roman Empire collapses, it'll be gone. Western Europe will descend into chaos, right? That will come to be known as the Dark Ages. Right? The Eastern Roman Empire will continue to thrive, and we'll begin to call that Eastern Roman Empire the Byzantine Empire. Right? In China, remember when we left them off with the collapse of the Zhou dynasty. That Zhou dynasty, when it collapses, it descends China into a period of war and chaos known as the Warring States period, where we end up with like 7 or 8 different Chinese countries that are fighting each other. The victor that will emerge from this will be the Qin dynasty, right, under Shi Huangdi, right? Shi Huangdi will also emerge from this chaos with a new political ideology, right? Legalism. Yeah. Right? Remember, this Warring States period is terrible for China, right? It's this awful civil war that lasts for about 300 years. Right? And we're going to see a couple of different big ideas come out of this that are all about restoring order. And legalism, while it's brutal, is about restoring order. Right? The basic idea is that the king has to rule with an iron fist. Right? So if Nadav is late to clash and I break his leg, that's a legalist response. Right, so it's a legal system with a series of very harsh punishments for crimes. The Qin dynasty, even though it's even though it's the shortest lived dynasty, at 35 years long, right? It has one emperor. We call it a dynasty just to make it sound like it's everything else, but it's not an actual dynasty because there's no next member of the family that takes over, right? But even though the Qin dynasty is the shortest lived, it creates the political identity of China. Right, so you start to see this, and that's where they get their name, right? China comes from the Qin. Right, so Shi Huangdi dies because apparently drinking mercury is bad for you. That's what some people say. Other doctors of his said that it was great and it was the key to surviving, death and stuff like that. But whatever, he dies. I remember they parade around his dead body with the carts full of dead fish for a while because they've been super cruel to people, and they're like, oh man, he doesn't have an heir, and he's dead, and that means that we're in trouble. And they were. But the Han will overthrow them, right? Han Wuti will come in. He'll establish a new dynasty. Well, his name was Wu Di, but he becomes the leader of the Han dynasty, and so we'll know him as Han Wu Di, right? Like Shi Huangdi's technical name is Qin Shi Huangdi. Right, so another big idea that comes out of this, right? So initially when the Han take over, they just kind of keep rolling with that iron fist, right? Because it's like, if Tyler's been beat up his whole life, it's just easy to beat him up still because he knows how to take the punch. And so that's kind of, when the Han take over, that they kind of continue that process for the first couple of emperors. But then after that, you start to see, people are like, hey, maybe we shouldn't keep hitting Tyler. Right? Maybe we should just try to talk to him. And so we start to see the influence of Confucianism, this other big idea that comes out of the Warring States period, right? This idea that's about restoring order in Chinese society by following the 5 basic relationships that we'll talk about later, right? And so it starts to inundate itself into Chinese society, and so we start to see things like this Chinese civil service exam emerge, right? So this one of the big ideas of Confucianism is about meritocracy, right? That you get your job based on your abilities, not based on your family. And so, Josh takes a test, he scores well, he gets to advance higher within the bureaucracy that the Han Dynasty will establish, right? We're going to see a number of technological developments here, right? We're going to see the invention of paper, real paper, right? Not the papyrus that like Egypt had used, or the cheaper, not necessarily normal paper that the Romans were running around with. You're also going to see the invention of silk, which is the big one. It will create it will create a global, or mostly global, trade network. Right, we're also going to see the invention of the yoke. Right, remember before the yoke came around, we had to tie the rope to the ox's tail, and it could only pull the plow so long until his tail popped off.
Deception and lies.
Jennifer, if you've been thinking that the yoke was tied to their tail before it was, that would be a problem. But what they used to do is they used to tie the rope around the cow's neck, and it can only pull so hard, right? It's like imagining putting your backpack strap around your neck, and then they figured out, hey, you know what doesn't collapse